Now, Props and Locks on Fox 32 Chicago, presented by BetRivers Sportsbook.
Good evening and welcome to a special Thursday edition of Props and Locks. I'm Caitlin Sharkey. Each week we break down the best bets and odds of the biggest games of the week, courtesy of BetRivers Sportsbook. Joining me every week, host of VSiN Rush Hour, Danny Burke. And Danny, we have a special primetime Bears matchup to look at first. 3-1 Chicago hosting 3-1 Tampa Bay. Bears coming off their first loss of the season. Catching 3.5. Buccaneers with a number of injuries on offense. The over-under at this one, 44.5. Danny, which way we leaning?
Yeah, Caitlin, you brought up the most important thing here, and that's injuries for the Bucs. Now, the Bears have really caught a break a couple of times this season going against other teams that have had some of their star players out, most importantly receivers with Kenny Golladay, with Julio Jones. The Bucs on this side, Chris Godwin, as we know, is going to be out in this game. LaShawn McCoy in the backfield will be out. Looks like Leonard Fournette is doubtful. Mike Evans, a game-time decision, and Scotty Miller, the hometown kid, looks like he should be able to go. But like you said, this line is at 3.5. It actually opened up at 3.5 in favor of Tampa Bay, went up to 5.5. Then you saw all the action go towards Chicago, mainly because of those injuries and just the inability to know what we're going to see from this Tampa Bay team on the roster. And it's always tougher on a short week playing on Thursday for the road team. Usually the advantage goes with the home team. But, Caitlin, you look at this game, I mean, this Bears offense, you just don't know what you're going to get. A poor performance last weekend against the Colts. Now, the Colts do have one of the best defenses in the league, but so do the Buccaneers. And you saw this total open at 45.5. It's dropped down to 44.5. A lot of people thinking that the under will be the play tonight because of how good that Bucs defense is and because of the Bears' inability to move the ball. So when you look at the DVOA rankings, it's a deeper dive into the analytics with defenses. Tampa Bay has the second best overall defense. And for rushing defense, they're ranked second. They allow about 64 rushing yards per game. This Bears team hasn't even gotten a rushing touchdown so far this season. So I'm really just pretty pessimistic about what this Bears offense is going to be able to do against the Bucs defense. So if it's 3.5, I'm probably going to stay away, to be honest. But if you get it at 3, or even if you want to buy the hook down, not necessarily something you advise too often, but if you're at that key number of 3, I would still lay it with Tom Brady in prime time going against this Bears team that offensively has not found a rhythm yet. Nick Foles just seems like he can't trust some of his receivers. Anthony Miller needs to have a consistent game. Jimmy Graham and Mooney have been consistent receivers, and obviously we know how good A-Rob is, but I'm just not too sold on the Bears offense. So for that reason, I lean a little bit toward the Bucs. But my best bet for this game actually would be to look at the team total under for Chicago. It's posted at 20.5. 21 would be more so the key number, of course, but I think the Bears don't put up 3 touchdowns in this game. So I gravitate toward the under 20.5. It's only a mark they've gone over twice, and this Bucs defense is really solid, especially against the run. A crucial part of this offense the Bears need to get going, and I don't think they do so tonight. So I like the Bears to score less than 21 points.
All right, well, before we move on to the next game, let's look at some quick prop bet options, including the quarterbacks in this battle, Tom Brady and Nick Foles. Player to have most passing yards, Brady minus 150, Foles plus 120, and also a total pass completions prop, Nick Foles over 21.5, Brady over 23.5. Danny, what do we like or do not like about these props?
Yeah, so earlier this one actually had Brady only listed at about minus 139, so you had a little bit better value relatively on Tom Brady, but all the steam has gone toward the GOAT, and now he's minus 150, like you said. Foles at about plus 120. Look, Brady's averaging about 280 passing yards per game. We have a small sample size with Nick Foles as of this point, but look, in my opinion, the only option really is to look Brady despite the injuries, just because, like we said, I don't know how much I can trust these Bears receivers as of this point. Nick Foles had a pretty solid game last week, but the receivers didn't help him out too much. Look for him to have a little bit better of a game, but really when it comes down to it, like I said, in prime time with Tom Brady, I think he's going to have a good performance despite Godwin being out. I think they still have plenty enough talent offensively to get there. And then you look at the completions. Like we said, he's at about 23.5. He averages about 25 completions per game. So I think you look at the over for Tom Brady completions. Nick Foles at about 21.5. No real feel as of this point. point, I'm kind of just sticking away from that one. But I think the better bet would be to bet Brady to have more passing yards and for him to get over his completions of 23.5 tonight.
Hard not to look Brady's way. Our second game, a Sunday night matchup between the Vikings and Seahawks. Seattle laying 7. This one could be a pretty high-scoring game. Jamal Adams may be out for Seattle. I know you usually go with the Vikings, Danny. This week, I'm taking Minnesota with the points.
Look, I would kind of agree with you in this spot. This whole week is really a big teaser week, which we like to talk about so much, where you tease a team down or up by 6, 6.5, 7 points. You pair that with another team. So a lot of people are going to be looking that way with the Seahawks, but I would probably gander at taking the 7 along with you. But another angle I would look at is to look at the Vikings first half over 12.5 points. This Seattle defense is brutal. They're allowing the most yards per game, and points per game they allow the 21st most so far at about 27. So I think the Vikings can get out to a hot start, get at least 14 points in this first half against a struggling Seattle defense that will be missing Jamal Adams.
All right, still plenty more to come on props and locks. And a reminder, you can place your bets at betrivers.com or using the BetRivers mobile app. We're back after this.
Props and Locks on Fox 32, presented by BetRivers Sportsbook.
Place your legal sports bets at BetRivers.com, your new home for sports betting. Millions of betting options a year on the sports you love. We offer live in-game betting on major sporting events worldwide. We have tons of bets available during games, from money lines, point spreads, prop bets, play-by-play bets, and many more. BetRivers.com offers live streaming of events worldwide. That's right, you can bet on the game as you're watching. Sign up now, and we'll match your first deposit up to $250. More bets, more action, more fun. Place your sports bets at BetRivers.com. Place your legal sports bets at BetRivers.com, your new home for soccer betting. The most soccer betting options on the sport you love. We offer live in-game betting on major soccer matches worldwide. We have tons of bets available during game, from money lines, goal spreads, player goals, half bets, and many more. BetRivers.com offers live streaming of games worldwide. That's right, you can bet on the game as you're watching. Sign up now, and we'll match your first deposit up to $250. More bets, more action, more fun. Place your sports bets at BetRivers.com.
We're back with more props and locks, presented by BetRivers Sportsbook.
Welcome back to Props and Locks. I'm Caitlin Sharkey, joined by the host of VSiN Rush Hour, Danny Burke. Danny, let's keep moving along. The Eagles visiting the Steelers. Pittsburgh coming off a postponed game last week. Bigger point spread in this one, with the Steelers laying 7.5, over under at 44.5. The under has hit in 4 of the last 5 games for the Steelers at Heinz Field. Danny, how are you leaning for this one?
The way I'm looking at this game, and like we just said before, perfect teaser opportunity, a home favorite of about 7 to 9 points. The Steelers fall under that category. As we know, they're kind of coming off that unintentional bye week. Sunday night football victory for the Eagles here. I don't still really trust this Philadelphia team. It's not to say that I'm going to lay the points with Pittsburgh here, but I think an angle you can look at is the team total points for the Steelers. Now, it was at about 25.5, and it's bumped up actually a little bit to 26.5 or so in that range. But Pittsburgh's at least gotten to that mark. They're averaging 27 points per game in each of their 3 games so far, and the Eagles are allowing 27 points per game. So you give the Steelers a little bit of time off with that unintentional bye week. The Eagles coming off that late game on Sunday night. I think the Steelers put up some points here, and I would look at the team total points over for Pittsburgh.
All right, next up, Jags and Texans. Houston, the 6-point favorite, a higher point total here at 54. Do we have another teaser opportunity on our hands with this one?
Yep, you absolutely nailed it. Houston falls under that category of teasing them down, so I'm electing to tease them down from 6 to a pick 'em, meaning they just need to win this game. So remember, a teaser allows you to manipulate the line by either 6, 6.5, or 7 points in your favor, and you have to pair it with at least one more team. So we'll get to that other team later, but the Texans are going to be the first part of that teaser for me. Tease them down from 6 to a pick 'em. Remember this Jags team, I mean, they looked a little bit better than a lot of people expected, but in the offseason, everybody thought this team was going to be tanking for Trevor, and they still could do that. Minshew's been looking solid, but last week we were on the Bengals. That came to fruition. I think the Texans finally get a win despite them not covering the number once so far this season. That's why I'm electing to tease them down. And Bill O'Brien's gone. I think it's going to be one of those revamped kind of moods in games for the Texans. I think they get the win outright, and that's why I'm teasing them down against the Jags.
Yeah, now or never for Houston. Moving on to the Colts and Browns. Colts coming off their win against the Bears on Sunday, laying 2 against Cleveland. And after seeing the Colts defense on Sunday, I like Indy here.
I agree with you here, Caitlin. I think this is arguably the most fascinating game of the slate on Sunday. And look, everybody's going to be having that recency bias toward the Browns, thinking, okay, they have these roster full of studs. It's finally coming up, and they're getting a lot of offense. Remember who they played against, though. The Cowboys, which have arguably one of the worst defenses in the league. I'd actually just dabble with the money line at this point and lay a little bit more at about minus 114, 115 instead of playing with the spread. We saw how good that Colts defense was against the Bears this past week, and just in general, that fluky game of the first week against the Jags, was whatever. But look, I think the Colts get the outright win. I would also gander a little bit toward the under in this spot too. Not necessarily as confident in that play, but I agree with you here. I would look toward the Colts. I think they win this game outright, and it's a kind of setback to reality for the Browns here. So give me Colts money line.
All right, last but certainly not least, the Bengals and Ravens. Some movement with this spread. Ravens win from laying 13.5. It's now down to 12. I'm staying away from the spread, going straight money line with the Ravens. Your thoughts, Danny?
Yeah, so this is a huge one here with that spread. It was at about 13.5 yesterday. Now we've seen all the attention go toward Joe Burrow and the Bengals, who came through for us last week, and he's 4-0 ATS as a rookie so far, so you got to absolutely love it. At 13.5, yes, I would lean the way of taking the points with the Bengals. Now at 12, the ship has sailed almost a little bit. I get it's still a high spread, but you also have to remember Lamar Jackson and that knee injury. I mean, they say he's going to be going, but that still could be a lingering issue. So with that high of a spread and that potent of an offense that we've seen from the Bengals, I would probably still look to taking the points with Joe Burrow and company.
All right, as we wrap things up, Danny, give me a rundown of your best bets of the slate.
All right, like we said for tonight with the Bears and the Bucs, I'm going team total under 20.5 for the Bears. I just don't think offensively they'll have enough against this really solid Bucs defense, specifically on the rush defense, where the Bears can't even move the ball on the ground whatsoever. We talked about the teaser as well. I'm teasing down the Texans, a 6-point teaser. So the Texans from laying 6 to a pick 'em, where all they need to do is win. And I'm also going with the Cardinals on the road against the Jets. No Sam Darnold, it's Joe Flacco, but I think the Cardinals can at least get that outright win. Tease them down from a 7-point favorite to a 1-point favorite. You pair those together, I think that's a good option. And then also, you can look at a prop for rush hour that we have at Bet Rivers. I think that Tom Brady will have more completions tonight than the Bears will have total points. That's another angle I'm looking at.
Yeah, as you talk about Tom Brady briefly, when you're looking at those prop bets, is it something that you look at the name and the quality of the quarterback when you're looking at things like that?
Certainly, that's what you got to look at. You look at who the quarterback is, how they perform in some of these primetime games, and really just the surrounding cast. So we know the Bucs are dealing with these injuries, but it's Tom Brady we're talking about here. And the Bears' defense has still been really solid, but you saw Phillip Rivers be able to kind of find some gaps in that pass defense this past week. Now, the Bears stepped up when they needed to, but I think enough completions will be had today by Tom Brady despite no Godwin in the mix. So I think he's going to be having a pretty solid performance on the field. And like I said, you already know I don't think the Bears are going to score a lot. Tom Brady's averaging about 25 completions per game, so I think he'll get around that number, and I don't think the Bears will get around there for their total points. So that's why I'm looking for Brady to have more completions than the Bears have total points. But it's all about just looking at trends and how they do in these kind of areas, and we know Tom Brady thrives in prime time.
And Brady is 5-0 against the Bears in his career. Well, thank you, Danny, and thank you for joining us on this Thursday edition of Props and Locks, brought to you by Bet Rivers Sportsbook, Chicago's hometown sportsbook. Join us every Sunday at 10 a.m. and make sure you place those bets at betrivers.com. A Thursday edition of Fox Kickoff Sunday is next.